this all for ya?
You're listening to Deep Purple Smoke on the Podcast. I will do one episode for each song the band recorded in the studio. However, this is a fan podcast and not band endorsed. It's more of a tribute to their long history, well beyond just the hits, and my way of giving something back to a band that has given so much to me. Let's dig in! Hello and welcome to another episode of Deep Purple Smoke on the Podcast. This is the season of revisits, taking all the songs that I reviewed with my friends in the podcasting world and those not in the podcasting world, and, going back over them by myself, because as a host, you got a lot of things to focus on when you have a guest. So there's things that I may have missed in the song. I think even the very first episode, I proved the point by finding things that I hadn't caught when I reviewed them the first time with a guest. So I am back to do that in another episode. This is episode 21, re-reviewing This Time Around an Ode to G. Originally, that show was done with my friend Nathan Beaudry from the Deep Purple podcast. We dug into that song pretty well, and I'm very curious to see if there's anything that I didn't catch, or maybe just how the song makes me feel today in this moment that I'm recording it. Now, as I mentioned, I'm recording a lot of these way ahead of time. This is set to air roughly around June 12th. It will depend on how many songs the newest Deep Purple studio album has, and whether it's out before it's time to launch this season or not. I may delay this season depending on if the album hasn't come out, what the outlook is, but they're saying the end of 2025. It is only July of 2025, and so there's a good chance that it will be out long before this season will be, but roughly around June 11th, 12th-ish, somewhere around there. So, that's like 11 months from now. That's right. 11 months. Boy, math is hard. It's about 6:30 at night. I've just had my first cup of coffee. I've been so busy that I haven't even sat down and had a cup of coffee. So that's why my brain is not working, which is going to make this review very interesting. Let's jump right in. Here it is, starting with the first half, This Time Around. What strikes me is just how elegant this song is. I mean, it comes in very gentle, very quiet, but we're getting a lovely piano performance. And then on top of that, we've got this synth. I shouldn't say on top because it really feels like it's behind it, actually. But there's just this lovely, smooth playing synth. And I say smooth playing because when I think about this being played on a keyboard, there are certain sounds that are, most sounds are done like a piano, where every time you hit a key, it makes the sound. You hit the next key, it makes the sound. They don't really flow. You hear a difference from one note to another. These kind of sounds, though, they're programmed in a way that if you hold one note down and start the next one before you lift that one up, it just smoothly moves the note between one and another. On a Casio keyboard that I had, my first keyboard, I think that was the portamento switch, and I'm not sure what they call it now. It might be something different. Being that was an old Casio, that might have been, a different term. But I remember that being the thing that did it. And so it's interesting, the tonal qualities in difference of synthesizer patches. And like I said, most of them play very much like a piano does. Each one's an individual note. But ones like this, they really allow you a sonic option that you don't get as a piano or generally a keyboard player. They allow you to do bends and slides up like you were sliding up the neck of a guitar. And it's pretty cool, but there's a difference in the way that you have to play them to make them work. You might have to hold on to a note longer than you would to trigger that slide from one note to the other, instead of it just dropping the note you were holding and picking up the next note you hit. So it's a little more challenging to play because it's not normal performance technique. You have to play to the way that sound works. So when I say smooth performance, John's nailing the way that you have to interact with this sound to make it work the way it is. Now, he could be using what's called a pitch bend wheel, but I don't think he is, because some of these notes seem to bend a little further than a pitch bend wheel will allow you to go. They usually only allow I think a step. I think a full step up or a full step down is typically it. And some of these notes seem to go beyond that, almost like they were done on a guitar synth. But I don't think we had guitar synths in 1974. Could be wrong about that, but I don't think they came out until later, at least nothing of quality, because even keyboards at some points, some of the patches were kind of questionable, but the technology was moving along very, very quickly. So anyway, I have to credit John with the way he performs this sound, because it is not standard keyboard playing. Of course, the addition of that synth bass is really amazing. It adds such a dynamic. It is a little louder than I would expect it to be, but I'm not saying that's a bad choice. I think it works very well, but it does cut through quite a bit over a piano that's a little more gentle, the synth that's a little more gentle. You've got Glenn singing almost in an ethereal tone with that flange on his vocals. Out of curiosity, though, I did take a quick look at the internet thingy. And according to it, it says that, of course, the first MIDI musical instrument digital interface, for those of you who don't know, which basically takes sound and turns it into data, or takes data and turns it into sound. So MIDI is not a sound, it is a numerical system. And it tells you what note to play, how hard to hit that note, and how long to sustain that note. Then you can program some things like modulation and bends and that sort of thing. You can also play them live with the benefit of a pitch wheel, or, as I said, certain patches will allow you to do certain things. But according to this, that first one that came out was the Roland GR700, and that was not until 1984, so a decade after this. Nate and I talked about the transition from this song going into Ode to G, kind of reminding us of the Butterfly Ball. And I think I know another reason why. This background synth that was added, I'm not sure exactly where it came in, because all of a sudden I just noticed it was there. It's not doing anything that is melodic, anything that you would really pick out in terms of like the other synth that we're hearing, which we're hearing very specific notes. It's really just something that he's playing chords on to fill in the environment, give us a little bit more atmosphere. And that is very similar to that synth that we heard on Butterfly Ball. Now, in 1974, not a huge amount of synthesizers out. A lot of the same sounds probably ended up on different things, just like with the Mellotron. Those Mellotron strings are very common in a lot of songs. So it's very possible that that or a very similar patch was used. But I think that might be part of the reason. I can't remember if we thought about that particular synth or not. We may have already mentioned that. I honestly don't recall that specific part of the episode. But very interesting. Yeah, I love the sound of it too. The blend that we're getting here, the way things are just kind of creeping in, the ethereal voice of Glenn, the layering is pretty intricate for a song that sounds so simple. As I look around, you can't be found. To lose you, I'd rather see the endless time of space go passing by this time around. All this time around. So look around, we all will be found in love. part on the bass there is great as Glenn is finishing up that line, because it sounds like he's starting to go into some kind of rhythm or pattern, but then it just stops and the song kind of resets a little bit, and we get just that note hanging in the air as we start in for the next verse. I'm a big fan of that. It's a great misdirection. I don't know if it was intended to be, but it, for me, certainly worked out that way. I don't think I've picked up on that before, but as I'm hearing it right now, and, you know, obviously I'm focused on the music in a way I've never been. I mean, the closest I came was when Nate and I did this. But like I said, when you're running a show, you've got a lot of things to pay attention to. You might miss some of the nuances. And in this moment, this is how this is hitting me. And I find it interesting because it feels like it was building up to something that doesn't quite happen ever, because we don't get it later in the song either. So I'm going to resign myself to the concept that we're getting two sounds that are flanged. One is Glenn's vocal, because I think there's things that are specific to what he's doing where the flange seems to come in and out. Could be the second one where John Lord is playing something that is triggering a very light sound that is very heavily flanged, whether it's like an airy pad, not a Don airy pad, just an airy pad, something very light and simple where you're going to get more the flange effect than an actual sound. Could be the way it's programmed and output he's using, although I don't think there were outputs that would allow you to just output the effect. So I think he was probably just heavily affecting a very light sound. Now, I say it could be the second because he could have been playing another track following along with Glenn's words, but that seems like a silly production thing to do. I like the idea of it, but why would you do that when you can just put flange on Glenn's voice and control the amount, the decay of it, how long, you want it to sustain, how quick it decays, all that. Why would you play along with it if you could do it that way and make it more precise? I can't find a good argument for that. So I think most likely they had one effect on Glenn's voice, and then whatever this other sound was that John's playing, it's got a really good evolving flange on it, because you hear the motion of it. You can feel it almost turning like a Leslie speaker. It just, you can feel the life in it. And that's one of the most interesting things about flange. Of all the effects, you think reverb makes something sound alive, and it does, because when there's no reverb on it, we talked about this, especially in the Stormbringer episode, how dead and studio sounding it feels, right? Reverb is very important. And reverb does make things sound livelier. But when you have a flange that's oscillating the way this does, it almost feels like it's breathing. It's a living thing. It's in motion. And that's the thing I love about flange. The thing I don't love about it is how easy it is to want to just put it on everything because it's so cool. It's like pizza shake, right? If you're a big fan of pizza shake, which is a combination of spices that they typically put on pizzas in restaurants, or in the old days of Pizza Hut, I think you could get like it was on the table, just like ketchup or anything in any other restaurant. I know you used to be able to get packets of it if you went and picked up your pizza like a takeout order at some of the places we used to have in Michigan. But it's something like you want to put it on everything, but you can't, because A, it doesn't work on everything, and B, it would just become monotonous if everything had flange on it. It's something that you want to use sparingly. It's something that when you do use it, you want it to have its impact. So as tempting as it is, that's the frustrating thing about it. It's like strings. You could put strings on every song and they would probably sound great. But if every song had strings, you wouldn't care about it anymore. Like, it's like, all right, what are the strings going to do in this song? And it would just become a very mundane tone. So it's one that I love and I hate it because it's just the temptation is always there to use it. And thinking back, I actually use it very little just for that reason. Deep Purple seems to use it quite often, but it's always used to taste. It's very rare that it stands out this much. I think Who Do We Think We Are would probably be the other example, a song like Super Trooper, where it's very apparent in the mix, just like this one. But apart from that, a lot of them are just small parts, a light amount, just something to coat it with, like powdered sugar on a donut. I don't know why I'm coming up with all these food references. It must just be hungry. But that's that's something I do.
This time, as I look around, you can't be found. To lose ya, I'd rather see the endless time of space go passing by. This time around, this time around. To lose ya, I'd rather see the endless time of space go passing by.
I'm really happy that Glenn put a push of energy in this. You can almost feel his muscles tightening up a little bit with the intensity that he's singing this with. But what I love the most is that he didn't go full throaty Glenn. He didn't do any screams or shouts. It wasn't too gravelly. It sounds really good. I think he found just the right level to push this to get the emotion across without overplaying it. And I have to give him huge props for his performance on the vocals on this song. I do find it a little bit weird that he didn't lay a bass track down of his own. The synth bass sounds good. I think it works very well for this song. It's ethereal. This is a different world for Deep Purple. But it seems like he would have wanted to lay down something, just something to accompany it, maybe something in a higher register. I don't know. Maybe they tried and it didn't work. I don't know. But I do find it interesting that there's no actual bass guitar track here.
To lose ya, I'd rather see the endless time of space.
Oh, there's something I've never heard before. So after Glenn says the word rather, there's a heavily oscillated sound that goes. Okay, it doesn't go like that. It sounds way better than what I just did there, but I've never noticed that before. That's a nice touch. Again, the blending on this song is so expertly mixed. Things just are there. They blend together so well that it's hard to pick out some of the individual things or notice them. But that I definitely did. And we're thinning out on the flange a little bit here too. So I think it leaves room for me to hear some other things cutting through. But that's actually really cool. I appreciate that. Also, I mentioned Glenn's performance on vocals, knowing when to push and how to do it without getting too gritty, getting too outside of the context of the song. I have to give the same props to John Lord. Listen to his piano performance. When he strikes the keys hard, when he's playing gentle, when he's playing very quietly, he's bringing us a depth of emotion that the vocal alone cannot give us. It's the combination of the vocal and piano that give us the depth of the emotion of this piece.
To lose ya, I'd rather see the endless time of space go passing by.
So I rewound it a little bit so you guys could hear it again. It was right after the word rather, just that nice oscillating sound in my right, a little more to the right, not fully in the right ear. But this song ends with such just a beautiful fade out, of the vocals and the flange. And it's just such a magical song. Again, very different territory for Deep Purple, but it doesn't feel out of place on this album. It works very well. This album has had a lot of textures. So to have something like this, I think works brilliantly. I mean, if you look at Burn and you think about A200, I know a lot of people don't like that song, probably because it's an instrumental. It's very synthy. It's a little bit different, but it does work well on the album, going from one song into another, and then you get to A200. Yes, it sounds a little bit different. It's experimental for a band that's pretty straightforward rock and roll, especially on Burn. I mean, that is just a hard rock album. I feel like this song fits just as well. Partially, again, nostalgia. I'm used to hearing the song on this album within the context of songs like Drifter and Coming Home and songs like that. It has the nostalgia factor. I have to admit that. But even the first time I heard it, or the first, as I started to get used to the album, I didn't think about it as, boy, this doesn't fit in with the other songs, does it? It felt very natural. And I think this is just a fantastic moment between John and Glenn that came together, played the story, John talking about the creation of the song on the original episode with Nate. Go check that out if you haven't heard it already. But it's just one of those moments where, two creative people happen to cross paths at the right moment. One inspires the other, and then that comes together. Then you have the third person coming in saying, hey, I've got this other song. And then one of the first creators going, let's put them back to back. Let's make this work as a single unit. And so they have their two separate titles because they're two separate songs, but they blend right in from one to the other. And interestingly, they're a single file ID on the original CD. As I'm recording this, I found out about a potential bonus track that I didn't notice on the 25th or 30th anniversary, whichever it was. And so that is currently en route. I found a copy of it at a pretty good price, and it's on its way here for me to check out as we speak. So by the time that you guys are listening to this, you'll know whether there was a bonus track episode for the Come Taste the Band season or not, because I'll just pop it right in there. I'm anxious to see. I have no idea yet, but I'm very anxious to see. But anyway, that will do it for this time around as we kick in with drums and get into the song Ode to G. Now, I did ask Nate, I forgot to talk about it on the episode. Again, so many things you're trying to keep track of. And I'm good at making notes and horrible at remembering to pull them up before I start the show or anywhere in the middle of it. But I had asked him after the fact if he knew what the G was, because that was, I'm wrong, but that might have been before G was a term for gangster. I think so, because I don't think that came along until a little bit later, again, 1974. So, yeah, I don't know for sure what the origins of that phrase are. I would look them up, but how do you know if anything you read is real or not? I know I gave you the statistic on the guitar synths, but that rings true with me because I remember something about it being an early 80s thing. But in any case, so I asked him, and he said, Ode to Gershwin. So I don't know what the relation to Gershwin is, whether there was something in a progression, or maybe John was thinking about a Gershwin song and jamming around it, or was playing a Gershwin song when he came up with the melody. Don't know. I don't know that much about Gershwin, to be honest. He's one of the artists that I might have to dive into on my first of the month classical episode of the Haskincast podcast. I've taken to having the first of the month episode be digging into something classical or other. At the time of this recording, I've dug into a couple of Beethoven pieces, including the entire Seventh Symphony. I've done Mozart's Requiem. I've done Ginastera's Estancia. I actually haven't recorded that yet, but I'm looking forward to getting to that. But that'll be well out long before this podcast airs. So, yeah, I might have to put Gershwin on that list and see what I can find. Although, when I think Gershwin, I think show tunes. I think performances like plays, musical theater, that sort of thing, which isn't really my forte. But you know what? How are you going to know what you can appreciate if you don't ever dig into it? And I might just have to take on something of his. So we'll see. Check the Haskincast can't speak anymore. That's the lack of coffee. Haskincast podcast episode list, and go to the website and just do a quick search for Gershwin and see if I ever did anything or not. I may have, I may not have. God only knows. But anyway, let's get back to the song. Here we kick into Ode to G. So speaking of reverb, these drums on this album are somewhat dry. I think it works for the most part, but what's interesting here is that it almost sounds tribal because we're not getting that, typical atmosphere that we would from drums on an album. It does sound like a tribe getting ready to go to war or just gearing up for something. And I like that. It sounds cool because we are also gearing up for a pretty cool song. And I think it works metaphorically as well as musically. I just love the music here because it doesn't exactly repeat. You have one that ends with the note up, the next one ends with the note down, and it feels like a back and forth conversation in a way. I like that. I also like the way Pacey's playing this because he's not just playing, boom tap, boom boom tap. He's got a double hit in there really fast. And these are very easy to do on a single kick drum, by the way. They sound cool, but they're very, very simple. Just like boom, ba boom, bam, boom, boom, ba boom, bam. It adds a little bit of flavor, although the first hit is always more subtle than the second hit because you have to return the pedal quickly to be able to get that second hit. And because you're trying to do it quickly, the second hit usually is harder because you have to have enough room for the pedal to spring back enough to hit it again, but you have very little time to do it. So the first one, quick, the second one, much harder, and that makes for ba-boom instead of ba-boom, ba-boom. It's very rarely consistent. You can tell if they're playing it with sticks. You think of a song like April, bum, ba-bum, bum, ba-bum, definitely not done with a foot pedal. And why would it be? That'd be weird. But yeah, this is really cool. I dig the music here. And it's such a feel-good thing, too, that it's much needed after the intensity of the first half of this. I love that feedback going into, I guess, what would be considered the chorus as much as it could be. And then this return back into what I would call the verse, which is very simple, just a short transition, but it's their regrouping point, right? They all come back together on this. Then we get Tommy getting ready to go off again on another emotional ride, which his performance on the song is absolutely amazing. The overall song, it just has a feel-good vibe to the whole thing. There's no moments of tension, no moments of stress, concern. It just feels good. Now, they do go to the part, we'll get there, where they do the stops. And that should, for most songs, take me out of that moment. That should feel a little bit concerned or curious or something different. But for some reason in this song, I don't get that feeling. Maybe I will this time. We'll find out. Let's get back to it. I like the way they hang on that da 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 da. It just slightly delayed. Instead of it being da 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 da, it's da 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 da. There's just a little bit of delay in there. And I love the drama of that. Again, not drama that feels tense or, anything like that. It still feels great, but I love that. It just adds a little more spice to the song. It's very slight, but you can feel it. Also, I don't know, I've said many times on the show, I'm not a guitar player. I have a very basic understanding of what can be done on a guitar. I've been known to make a sound or two, but I'm more of a bass guy. I don't know if these two notes that we're getting from Tommy, I don't know if it's possible to play them together at one time or if that's an overdub track. I mean, I'm thinking you hold your fingers in positions on notes over two strings, you strike those strings together. I don't know if it's physically possible to play that. I'll throw that out there as a possibility, but whatever it was, whether he played one note and then came back on another track and did a layer over that, or whether he actually did them at the same time, the creation that we're getting from him is very intelligent, feels great for this song. That was great the way Tommy just kept playing over that part regardless of what everyone else was doing. Uh, it's such interesting choices. It almost feels like he said, hey, shut off the tape. I know what key we're in. I'm just going to play. Let's see where it comes out. And you do it blind and it comes back with something brilliant like that. Or he just had the musical sense to do something very different there. And I think it worked. And the ever-evolving drum track on this song giving us a little bit of a different flavor. Now he's throwing in some extra accents on the hi-hat. Dun, 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 dun. Really cool. He's still keeping up with the bass drums here and there. So he's throwing in a lot of different stuff, and it's keeping the song rolling, keeping it from getting stale, not a straight beat. Just here's what I'm feeling in the moment, and this is how I'm going to play it. I think that's one of the key factors to Deep Purple is being honest to the moment within the context of the song. I could be the only one in the world that thinks that, but that's what I think. Nice little bass slide from Glenn. I don't recall noticing before. It's very possible Nate and I talked about it. Boy, it's been such a busy week, considering that we recorded this a week ago. I'm pretty amazed at how much I don't remember about that conversation at the moment, but my head has been very active, so understandable. But yeah, that's a cool little slide in the middle of this too. I'll rewind it a couple seconds so you can hear it. I'm really glad they didn't just keep doing these staccato parts until the end of the song. I like that they just do it for a little bit, go to something a little more live action, then back to the staccato. It's actually a really neat and interesting way to end the song. It's very different. I can't think of any other songs that have quite this structure. But then again, it's hard to think when you're listening to one song to think about all the other songs that are out there. I like that Ian Pace is switching fills from the toms or from the snare to the toms here. Again, adds just a unique flavor that you really only get on this album because of those melodic opportunities that he had with the kit that he purchased. You get a little bit of it in other places, but this is really the one that I think has the broadest range of sounds from Ian. Now remember, this would not have been recorded to a metronome. This is, four guys in the studio playing live and just tracking with each other. But I like in that slowing down section here at the end where they're not exactly on time with each other, much like other songs I've mentioned, such as the beginning of Space Truckin', where not everything is 100% on. I love the sound of that. Real musicians playing live and that live performance being captured. Nowadays, I think they would just come in there and fix everything. Also, I do love the end of this. I mentioned in the original episode that it reminds me of the beginning of Jimi Hendrix's song Foxy Lady. And it does that a similar guitar technique with actually a very similar sound with the way that they had their setups. But I've always liked that part. I think it ends on kind of a cool note. They could have blended that into another song. I'm really glad they didn't. But that feels like it could have blended into a third piece had they wanted to really make this thing longer. But I think what we get is just perfect. It's a great, for lack of a better term, note to end on. But yeah, a great couple of songs. I love the way that they blended these. I love just the story of how they came together and how brilliantly it works, because they are two very, very different songs. And I like that the second part seems to make all the stress of the first part okay. All the uncertainty, all the, what's going to happen. I have these memories, the same surroundings that stood. This time it's going to be better. All those things that we're getting lyrically in the first one that are kind of done in a, I don't want to say melodramatic because that doesn't seem to be right, but they're done with uncertainty and concern. And I feel like this is the song that is the arm to go around Glenn and say it's going to be okay. I think it's a great companion piece to the first half. So very well done, Deep Purple. Two thumbs up. If I could grow another thumb just to give this another thumbs up, I would do it. Not capable of that. I'm sure there's a genetic engineer somewhere that could give me a third thumb, but we don't have time to grow an entire digit. So let's wrap this episode up, guys. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Deep Purple Smoke on the podcast. Since I don't have the exact schedule for what days these will air, I'll just say we'll be back for another episode as soon as possible. Cheers. Thanks for listening to Deep Purple Smoke on the Podcast, a tour of the entire Deep Purple studio recordings. Please remember to give the show a rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening. Leave a comment and tell your friends. I also have a Patreon set up if you'd like to support the show. You can also write to me at smokeonthepodcast@gmail.com. I hope you enjoyed the episode and thanks for listening.